The courtroom fell silent as young Marcus approached the bench, his small sneakers squeaking against the polished wooden floor. Judge Helen Carter had presided over family court for 23 years, and in all that time she thought she had seen everything. But nothing could have prepared her for what this 10-year-old boy was about to say. Marcus stood before her in his blue plaid shirt, his dark curly hair neatly combed, his eyes filled with a mixture of hope and fear that only a child who had known loss could carry. Helen looked down at the file before her, her reading glasses perched on her nose as she reviewed the case one more time. Marcus Thompson, age 10, had been in the foster care system for 3 years after his mother passed away from cancer. His father was unknown, and there were no other relatives who could take him in. He had been through 4 foster homes in those 3 years, each placement falling through for one reason or another. Nothing about Marcus himself. The reports always said he was a good boy, quiet, respectful, did well in school. But life had a way of being complicated, and finding the right home for any child was never easy. Helen had been assigned to his case 6 months ago when his latest placement was being reviewed for permanent adoption. She remembered the first time she saw Marcus, sitting quietly in the back of the courtroom while the adults discussed his future as if he were not there. Something about him had tugged at her heart that day. Maybe it was the way he sat so still, so patient, as if he had learned not to expect too much from life. Or maybe it was the way his eyes followed her movements with careful attention, studying her as if trying to understand whether she was someone who would truly listen. Over the following months, as the adoption proceedings moved forward, Helen found herself thinking about Marcus more than she should. She would see him every few weeks when his case came up for review, and each time she noticed small things. The way he always said thank you, even when he did not get the answer he hoped for. The way he carried a worn paperback book with him, reading quietly while waiting. The way he never complained, never made a scene, even when decisions were made that clearly disappointed him. Helen was 58 years old, and she had never married, never had children of her own. Her career had been her life, and she had told herself for years that she was content with that choice. But lately, especially since her mother passed away 2 years ago, she had been feeling the weight of coming home to an empty house. Her friends told her to get a cat, maybe take up gardening, find hobbies to fill the time. But Helen knew what she was feeling was not about filling time. It was about missing the chance to matter to someone in the way a parent matters to a child. She had pushed those thoughts aside, telling herself it was too late, that she was too old, too set in her ways. And then Marcus walked into her courtroom. Today was supposed to be a routine hearing, a final check before his current foster family would move forward with adoption. The Hendersons were good people, Helen had verified that thoroughly. They had 2 other children, both adopted, and they ran a stable, loving home. Marcus would be well cared for there. But as she called the case to order, something unexpected happened. Marcus raised his hand, his small voice cutting through the formal proceedings. "Your Honor, may I say something?" Helen paused, glancing at the social worker and the attorneys present. It was unusual, but not forbidden. "Of course, Marcus, what would you like to say?" The boy took a breath, his hands clasped tightly in front of him. "I know the Hendersons are nice people, and I know they want to adopt me. And I am grateful, I really am. But there is something I need to tell you first." Helen leaned forward slightly, her full attention on the child before her. "Go ahead, I am listening." Marcus looked directly at her, his young face serious beyond his years. "Over these past 6 months, every time I come to this courtroom, you are the only person who looks at me like I matter. Not like I am a case number or a problem to solve. You look at me like you see me." Helen felt her throat tighten, but she kept her expression professional. "I do see you, Marcus. Every child who comes through this courtroom matters to me." "I know," he said quietly, "but it is different with you. When you ask me questions, you really listen to the answers. When you smile at me, it reaches your eyes. My mom used to smile at me like that, before she got sick." The courtroom was absolutely still now, everyone sensing they were witnessing something profound. Marcus continued, his voice trembling just slightly. "I have been in 4 homes in 3 years, and they were all okay. The people were not mean or anything. But I never felt like I belonged, like I was really part of a family. And I have been trying to figure out why, what was wrong with me that I could not make it work." Helen started to speak, to tell him nothing was wrong with him, but Marcus was not finished. "Then I realized something. It was not about the houses or the other kids or any of that. It was because none of them felt like home. And the reason they did not feel like home is because my mom was not there. Helen felt tears threatening but held them back, her years of courtroom discipline keeping her composed. "I miss her every single day," Marcus said, his own eyes glistening now. "And I know she is not coming back. I am not a little kid who does not understand. But when I am here, when I talk to you, for just a little while I feel like maybe I could have that again. Someone who looks at me the way she did. Someone who cares not because it is their job but because they choose to." The social worker had tears running down her face now, and even the court reporter had stopped typing, just listening. Marcus took one more breath and said the words that would change everything. "Your Honor, I know this is probably not how things work, and I know you are a judge and I am just a kid in the system. But you feel like a mom to me. And I was wondering, is there any way, any possible way, that you could be my mom for real?" The silence that followed was deafening. Helen sat frozen, her carefully constructed professional walls crumbling in an instant. She looked at this brave, beautiful child standing before her, and in that moment saw not a case file but a son. A boy who had lost everything and was still finding the courage to hope. Who had spent 6 months studying her, trusting her, and daring to believe she might love him back. Helen removed her glasses slowly, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. The rules of decorum that had governed her courtroom for decades seemed suddenly insignificant. "Marcus," she said, her voice thick with emotion, "do you know what you are asking? The adoption process is complicated, and I am the judge on your case, which creates conflicts. There would be investigations and reviews and so many hurdles to overcome." "I know," Marcus said simply, "but my mom always told me that things worth having are worth fighting for. And having a real mom again, that would be worth fighting for." Helen looked around the courtroom at the stunned faces, at the social worker nodding encouragement through her tears, at the attorneys who were supposed to be advocating for the Henderson adoption. She thought about all the rules she had followed her entire career, all the boundaries she had maintained. And then she thought about going home tonight to her empty house, and about this child going to another placement that was good enough but not what his heart needed. She stood up, stepping down from the bench in a move that was highly irregular. Walking around to where Marcus stood, she knelt down to his eye level. "I cannot promise you this will be easy," she said softly, looking into his hopeful face. "There will be processes to follow and people who will question whether this is appropriate. But Marcus, if you are asking me if I would be honored to be your mother, if I would fight through every obstacle to make that happen, then yes. Yes, 1,000 times yes." Marcus threw his arms around her neck, and Helen held him tight, this child she had known for only 6 months but who had somehow claimed her heart completely. The courtroom erupted in tears and applause, the formal dignity of the proceedings abandoned in favor of pure human joy. The Henderson family, sitting in the back, were crying too, sad to lose Marcus but moved by the profound connection they had just witnessed. In the months that followed, Helen did indeed face scrutiny and questions about the appropriateness of a sitting judge adopting a child from her own caseload. She voluntarily recused herself from all his future proceedings and underwent the same rigorous home studies and evaluations as any other prospective parent. Some colleagues questioned her judgment, but many more supported her, having seen over the years how much she cared about the children who came through her courtroom. 8 months after that extraordinary day, the adoption was finalized by another judge in another courtroom. Marcus Thompson became Marcus Carter, and Helen finally understood what she had been missing all those years. She had not been too old or too set in her ways. She had simply been waiting for the right person to build a family with. And that person had been brave enough to ask. On the first Mother's Day after the adoption, Marcus made Helen breakfast in bed. Slightly burnt toast and scrambled eggs that were a bit rubbery, but served with such pride and love that Helen declared it the best meal she had ever eaten. As they sat together, Marcus leaned against her shoulder. "I am glad I spoke up that day," he said, "even though I was scared." "You taught me that," Helen replied, stroking his curly hair. "You taught me that sometimes the bravest thing we can do is ask for what we really need." They sat in comfortable silence, a mother and son who had found each other in the most unexpected way. Both of them knew that life would still have challenges, that grief and loss did not disappear just because love arrived. But they also knew they would face those challenges together. And that made all the difference. Helen often reflected on how a single moment of courage from a 10-year-old boy had transformed both their lives. How he had seen what she was too afraid to hope for and had spoken it into existence. In her courtroom, she had always been the one with the power, the one who made the decisions. But Marcus had taught her that real power comes from vulnerability, from being brave enough to say "I need you." From being honest enough to say you feel like home. They built a life together filled with homework help and soccer games, movie nights, and long talks about everything and nothing. Helen discovered that motherhood at 58 was not too late at all. It was exactly the right time. Marcus thrived in ways his files had never predicted, his quiet resilience blossoming into confidence when he finally had the secure foundation he needed. And sometimes, late at night when Marcus was asleep, Helen would stand in his doorway watching him breathe, marveling at how her carefully ordered life had been beautifully disrupted by love. This was the family she was meant to have, and it had been worth every moment of the wait. Because sometimes the greatest gifts come in the most unexpected packages. And sometimes, all it takes is one brave soul to say what everyone else is too afraid to voice. You are my mom. 3 simple words that changed everything. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring true stories. Leave a comment below telling us about a moment when someone showed you unexpected love. Your story might be the encouragement someone else needs today.